My name is Kali. My pronouns are they, them. And welcome to another installment of my writing vlog 2.0, where I'm documenting writing a first draft, running my indie imprint with all the events that go along with that, and also making it somehow work with a 9 to 5. And I'm currently working on a shorter novel. Maybe it's going to be a novella called The Sealskin Throne. It's a queer fantasy set in an approximation of early medieval Scotland, but it's so much more seated in my own world. It just has a few elements of legends and sort of landscape that I'm borrowing. It's inspired by a recent trip to the Isle of Skye. So that's sort of the summary out of the way. And weirdly, we are starting today with my decision that I'm not going to write today. I've talked before about that I have really big problems in like taking rest days, and I'm not feeling it today. I had an event yesterday that went very well. It was very lovely, where I do books and yarn, so that was a yarn event, and it was almost full day. So I've basically had a 1 day weekend, and even though I didn't write yesterday, I've given myself permission to skip today as well. This is a pretty big step for me, that I'm basically just saying no, don't want to today, because I'm very strongly habit forming and I can feel absolutely horrible if I don't do the thing. So with me, the problem of sort of getting over myself sitting down and writing is usually not the problem. The problem is so doing it in a sustainable way. So this chapter starts with me saying, no, I'm not writing today. I'm working. I'm working from home on Mondays, but I'm skipping my lunchtime writing sprint today. Part of that is because I'm just tired after yesterday, but also, yeah, just trying to listen more to what's really going on. Basically, yes, duty, but not duty over sustainability. And I think as writers, you so often hear the opposite thing as basically, yes, you need to sit down, you need to me, productivity, me. Um, that I think talking about almost the opposite, where it's you're so driven that it's sometimes not healthy. And that's not a humble brag, that's just how it is. Um, so I thought that was an interesting thing to start off with. As I mentioned, it's one of my like biggest issues, um, that I don't make myself, yeah, just conform basically. Um, and I just had a thought, and now it's gone again. It's one of those days, which is also why I'm not writing today. No, what I wanted to say was, even though it's a first draft, if I know that I'm sort of sitting down and forcing myself, and what's coming out is probably not. I'm not wanted to be perfect. That's never going to happen. But at least so that I don't need to go back and fix an awful tone. But not writing does not mean not thinking about it, because I've been sort of ruminating as well. So I think sometimes we need, or I think we need to count those sort of staring into space and letting your synapses do some of the work needs to count as well. It's going to be it's like a sort of break week because I don't have an event at the weekend, which is pretty welcome. Um, Depending on the weather, I'm thinking about doing a visit to the one of the national arboretums on the weekend because driving around this week or like the last 2 days, the colors really popped off along the roads, and usually I really like to do, like a maple leaf viewing day. So I might do that this weekend. Um, but yeah, I decide that a bit further along. I have a meetup with a friend of mine who's a bookkeeper who has kindly offered to look over my tax return because it's the first time I'm going to have to do a tax return for my indie imprint. So I'm going to meet with her tonight, and she, yeah, just will check over what I've done and so oh, okay, we need to do it a different way or something. So yeah, so just for me to have the safety when I submit it that it's not like likely to cause me troubles. And the rest of the week will be mostly mostly writing. I think that I've ordered a proof copy of a hardback edition that's out in March. I think that's due to be dispatched next week, so I won't probably have it for this vlog. But I'm so excited about it. Just to, yeah, I don't know why hardback is special. There's going to be a foiled hardback, and yeah, just to it's not it won't have any sprayed edges or any other special things. Um, because I was thinking about it, but actually this would mean that I have to charge an absolute like fortune for it. And I don't think I'm at that level yet where I can get away with releasing a book as a special hardback before it's been out in the world and people have formed an opinion on it. And I don't, yeah, I might consider doing um like special hardback edition for a shorter one, but this is quite a big one, so I'd rather not, to be honest. I'd rather do it for a smaller project as well, and something where that's sort of a standalone. I might consider it for the Sealskin Throne because by the time that is released, that's going to be a fair way off, to be honest. Um, One of my things is that I've mentioned countless times before that I give myself a lot of time in between drafts and in between first draft and publication. It's usually a couple of years at least. Just, yeah, that's how it usually works out. Um, yeah, that's sort of it's very grey outside. Don't think it's raining. It's sort of wet as well. So I'm not that fussed about being outside today anyway. So I will make myself some lunch and then go back and work my second shift after that. And I'll see you very soon. It's Wednesday and I've just been to the market. This time the haul is a bit more extensive. Also because I was slightly hungry when I went into the market, which is not a good idea. I bought some of the wet walnuts. They were on offer. Um, because they didn't, I think because they don't look great anymore. So because, as I said, they start to mold really easily. I mean, that's not affecting the inside, but it's still something I need to eat those quickly. Um, then some purple sweet potato, one green pepper. I mean, this is why I love to go to the market, because it can be so very intentional with your shopping. One custard apple, but this is still very hard, so that needs to ripen quite a bit. Some cabbage, because we are in cabbage season, and I I love cabbage. Some samosas, then some cake, some soft rolls, because I've ran out of bread and I slightly panicked because of bread is the one thing I always need to have. And then some tulips that I really couldn't pass up, to be honest. I will combine them with the other bouquet that I got from the market. So yeah, and that's it. I also wrote half a chapter, and it's really funny. I didn't consider that before starting on this project. But of course, if you're writing a ghost story from the perspective of a ghost, there still need to be feelings involved, or like how does she perceive things when she doesn't have a body anymore? So I sort of got around with sort of saying, okay, these are sort of echoes of her having a body, and actually they going to decay over time, and they just going to fade away, and there's a bit of a time crunch because of that. So she can still sort of, because she knows how certain things smell, there's still a sort of a sense of smell at least, and also some like internal sensings, let's say. um, but yeah, that was something that I had to think through lots of times today. um, And I definitely need to pay attention to that when I'm coming to like develop the second draft, if that all makes sense, if I need to tweak stuff. Um, so lots of my writing sprint today was basically staring into space, trying like finding a way around certain limitations. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm like writing in the beginning, if I have such a new set of premises, is slower for me. Yeah, I at the moment I'm still quite happy with how I got around that problem. And then I've just I have for 2025 I have made a plan to use up some of my, let's say, hoarded stuff, because I have a tendency to stock things. And I just from I have like one very nice scented candle that I bought in Sky or on Sky, and then I wanted to start using, because this story is so much about my time on Sky. But then I realized that I had like two other candles that I need to use up first. So I'm really trying to uh, if it's sort of Project Pan, I don't know, but definitely sort of the um, comment videos on overconsumption, because I know I have a tendency to, as I said, with the bread, if there's no bread, I'm going into a slight spiral. And I go through phases where I do the same thing for scented candles, for example. Like each winter, there like more scented candles are coming to be added to my stash. So this year I'm really trying to use stuff up. And I've basically said, okay, until a certain amount, no buying any shampoo, no buying any soap, no buying any scented candles, um, incense stick as well. It's like pens, like ballpoint pens as well. So there are these little things where, yeah, I just have a stash of them and I'm trying to get through them. Um, and yeah, I so I will have to burn a bit. I mean, this smells really nice as well. And this has only a tiny bit left. And it's also, yeah, these are the more expensive ones. And I think I'm pretty inspired by smell, which is sort of why I wanted to start burning the sky candle. But yeah, need to do those first. Apart from that, nothing out of the ordinary, really. I'm really looking forward to having a more relaxed weekend. I will still do stuff, but it's not like be there at a very specific point and do that and be. It's always when you're on an event. I mean, it's always like your persona that you are. It's it's authentic, but it's also because you're so like directed outwards. It can be really draining. And I think that's one of the things that I learned this year. I definitely can only do one event per weekend. And if I'm selling, I can only do, yeah, like one day. I can't do 2 days because it's just, I mean, I'm so introverted that it is sometimes, it feels a bit, not like a personality transplant, but it is still me, but a part of me that is not very practiced, let's say. So, yeah, this is why this weekend I'm like just really trying to not put a lot of pressure on myself. Um, but I finished knitting my swimming hat because I always wanted to try a hat with this hat, with the little ears. So this is something that I'm going to try out on the weekend, see how that works. And then I've started working on the next scarf commission that I got on the weekend. Yeah, so hopefully that will take me like a week or so to knit up. And so we are pretty busy actually, even though it's supposed to be like a more relaxed week as it goes. Okay, see you in a bit. It's Sunday, late morning, and it's so gloomy outside that I had to put the lights on. It's supposed to rain really heavily today, so I've basically said, okay, I'm staying in today. Also, yesterday I was out and about quite a lot. I went to the lake for swimming, and then I went on from there to the National Arboretum in Westernbird to look at some maple leaves, and it was popping. I found it really. I think I booked my ticket for 1 o'clock, and there was a massive line of cars going in. I think it's probably because the weather's supposed to get worse now, and the colors obviously are great at the moment. But in sort of the main arboretum, I noticed that there, apart from the aces, so the maples, there actually were quite not as many colors around as if I'm just driving around. The colors are really nice this year, but I almost find that I see most of them when I'm taking the back road. So I did basically coming back. I purposefully went off the motorway and went one of my favorite sort of little roads, um, yeah, route just to see more colors. This year is really interesting because the hawthorn fruits are really heavy and dark red. It seems like wild apples have done really well this year, so you see sort of squashed little apples everywhere. It's really so every year feels different. And because I actually rode quite a lot yesterday because I sort of had time to wait at the lake, and then I read quite a bit as well because yeah, the problem at the Arboretum was that it was basically so busy that there was no way I could sort of get a coffee and sit down in a cafe because it was just, yeah, crazy. So um I decided after 2 hours that too many people. I've seen the trees. Now just get back in the car, like take the long way back, and that's, yeah, that's it. And then also, because I did quite a bit of writing yesterday, I think I'm on chapter either 7 or 8. I need to check. Um, and I'm sort of making progress, but I don't feel as if the story has taken off yet. Um, I concentrated a lot on reading, and I used to do that where I basically picked a day and said this is a reading day. But it turns out that this is a bit too prescriptive for me, and then I go off the rails a bit. So it's much better if that comes about organically. So I really steamed through Mexican Gothic. I heard lots about the book on BookTube and was really positively surprised that I enjoyed it so much. It's definitely creepy. I think because I've read so much T. Kingfisher recently and also some nature books, I knew quite early on so which direction it was going to go in, but obviously not the particulars. So it wasn't like a big surprise, a bit twist, but I think it's also a book that really works with like autumn vibes. So like really good. And then last night I started In Memoriam, which is or has been compared a lot to Birdsong by Sebastian Faulks, and I think that definitely holds up. Um, I like this better than Birdsong, but hey ho. But it has the same like tension, the same horrificness of what's going on. So basically, this is about two um, young men who are both under the age of like where they could enlist in the First World War. They meet at a public school in what I found out from the historical note is basically supposed to be Morpeth College, which is incidentally just around the corner from me. So lots of the landscapes, there are not that many landscape descriptions, but some of the the feel of the book felt really familiar. And so when I sort of read the author note at the end, said, yes, that makes sense. There were hints that this is actually, I mean, it was very clearly stated that it was sort of a Wiltshire regiment that they were joining. But and it's basically like a almost like a failed, so they fall in love with each other while they're still at school, and then find that like every like each of them finds a different way into the war, and then they meet again, and then they lose each other, and then they meet. So it's basically um, you will them to survive for each other. I think that's basically it. I found this really interesting because it's wonderfully written. It's a debut novel, which is astonishing. But like the historic details, and the author lists some of the sources that she used to draw from, and she also used German sources, which I really liked. Also, how the was portrayed. Um, Also reminded me a lot about what I was taught about it in history lessons. I We had like a history module where we went into our town's archive and just looked through sources from like early 20th century, around the First World War, because obviously with everything that happened later, the First World War never really got a lot of airtime in German history classes. You learned about it, but I think that has shifted now. But I think our teacher made an effort to address that. So I actually read. So lots of this is features letters that are written back and forth, not just between the two of them, but also between other people. And I actually read German letters written from the front to parents and siblings and so forth. And that reminded me a lot of, like, these letters remind me a lot of those actual letters. And also, there are some, it's a bit mixed media, so they are basically of the school newspaper, there are bits and pieces, and she basically said that she drew on actual sources of Marlborough College for these excerpts. So they ring really true because they are based on true pieces of media at the time. I can like only recommend this if you're only a tiny bit interested in the First World War or history. Definitely, this is high on the list. Um, I For my personal taste, I would have liked it if the book had ended a bit earlier, but I think I understand why she chose to go where it ended. So, um, as you can see, I'm in a non-fantasy reading bubble, which is basically why is what. So I'm waiting for two fantasy halls from the library, and they haven't come in yet. And so I've basically, I had this recommended to me, saw this in the catalog, and yeah, and it was there really quickly. Um, this one I pulled from a little free library, so we'll go back into it. And because I recognize the title, and because it's a fairly new book, I just, yes, this is something I would at least have a look at. I mean, one of the reasons I love Little Free Library so much is because it's so risk-free. I'm really trying not to buy many books that sort of that sit around. Ebooks is a different matter. I'm a bit of a sucker for sort of ebooks on offer, but because the content is so tiny, I really need to be careful about what I invite in, basically, without. So I'm even books that I really liked, if I know I'm not going to read them again, I will put them in the little free library. Um, and yeah, and that got me thinking about reading, because I think it's important for my personal writing that I read not just, I mean, I read fantasy for research, but I think sometimes like the genre echo chamber is a bit of a problem. So this is why I like to read like outside of my favorite genre as well, which also why I like sort of our local book club because you're not involved in choosing the books, you just get them handed to you, and then you just need to get on with it. Either you like it or you don't. So you definitely get to read books that you would never ever picked up. And this is also why I love the libraries so much, the little free libraries, because you get like, oh, that sounds interesting. I might have heard about that. Let's give it a try. And you always have a place where you can get rid of books if you need to. Because I think sometimes, yeah, the fantasy, especially for fantasy, because it's I always feel it's simultaneously a very wide and a very narrow genre. Um, I think in a way we are riffing off maybe like 10 old books in general, and then it went from that. And these like the roots are still um somewhere in all the later books that came after them. And then obviously you have lots of people who, because they're riffing on the tropes, expand the genre and go in totally different directions. And then the latest genre blending stuff that happens all over the place, which is also why um, I think, not because I am very interested in writing like a true genre blend, but I think that just happens by itself that some motives might come into my writing from other genres, which is why sort of historical novels and gothic. I mean, this definitely is like magical realism has a bit of yeah magic in it. Um, I think why it's so important to, for me at least, to read outside of my chosen genre. I know it's sometimes it can be difficult with time constraints and just yeah the amount of bandwidth that we have. But even if I don't declare days as reading days anymore, I still think that the concept is very valuable to me because I need to feed my brain in order to write. Um, and I used to go through very distinct phases of writing and then sort of stocking up and reading again. At the moment, I'm really trying to do both at the same time. And I think now I'm in a position where because I'm writing slowly at the moment, because I'm sort of still feeling my way in, I'm almost certainly can tell you that 25 chapters is probably not going to cut it, but we'll see. So it might be a short novel, not a novella. I think because I'm slow in writing at the moment, I like make a point of reading more. I mean, I've since at least a few years ago, I always try to, also because I definitely have like sleep problems and everything, I try to sort of calm myself down by reading and I in the evenings, and I'm really trying to allot a certain time in the evenings to do that. Um, I think like sleep hygiene wise, that hasn't really helped. I definitely, I mean, Fridays is Fridays all bets are off, then all my schedule is totally jumbled anyway. But yeah, for example, yesterday I made a point of going to bed early because I wanted to start this book and got more than halfway through and finished it this morning, which is a bit of an exception, but because also the truth is that it didn't calm me down because I wanted to keep reading, but at some point I just need to be realistic that Okay, no, you need to put it aside now. You need to try and sleep now. But in general, I think it helps. So, yeah, I'm still the next two books that I'm going to read. I have a small nonfiction book about cuckoos from my local library, which is really good for like nature writing. And I think that's about, from what I could see, is all about like the cultural significance of the cuckoo and like what we know about it, how it shows up in literature and music. So I'm, because it's tiny, so I'm quite excited to read that. And then I have like the next book and something else I can't remember, but it's then none of them are fantasy. And then hopefully at some point my fantasy holds will come in. I mean, it's not that I don't have a whole Kindle full staff full with fantasy. If I need to have fantasy, there's definitely something I could read. But maybe it's sort of a bit of a cleanse. I hate that word, but sort of a, okay, let's get on other genres in, and then we can do fantasy again. Um, I noticed that I'm going through reading circles where I need something really trashy, and then I want something that's more of a classic, and then I want something trashy again. So what I say is sort of every book has its reason for being in the world, or almost every book, let's say. I I need very different genres, very different levels of intent. Sometimes I want to think, sometimes I don't want to think, and I think both. It, unless you're demanding something like all the time, I think, yeah. I mean, if you fine, do what you want to do. I know for me, it's sort of a more of a variation of a menu, let's say, that is really important to me. And I think with that, that's a really good end to this week's writing vlog. I said I'm writing, but I think I'm reading more at the moment. And that's not bad. That's just how it goes sometimes. If you like my style of vlogging, I would be delighted if you would consider following me and give me a thumbs up. If you subscribe to my newsletter, I'll send you the first volume of my Slow Moon series as a free EPUB sign up gift. And then you can, risk free again, have a look whether my writing is to your liking, or if not. I think that's all for this week. Thank you so much for watching, and see you soon.